Hello, Empowered Warriors. Welcome to episode 7. If you are an entrepreneur or a budding business owner who is constantly finding yourself broke, then this is the episode for you. I go into detail why we so often get in our own way and what specifically can be done about it. If you are a struggling entrepreneur and want to make an impact, but you have yet to see the return, then you are in for a treat today. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Empowered Warrior Podcast. My name is Angela Noel, and I am an intuitive coach, acupuncturist, and Chinese herbalist. This podcast is all about empowerment, meaning how you can maintain your personal power in order to have the best life beyond your imagination. An empowered warrior is someone who has the identity of a person who is healthy, radiant, and free from all suffering, and has the tools ready and available to move through life's obstacles with confidence, ease, and a sense of freedom. In this podcast, I bring over 16 years experience in Chinese medicine, countless years of self-development, and a passion for helping others find their personal power. I will be discussing just a few of my favorite topics regarding health from a Chinese medicine perspective, brain habits, and spirituality, so that you can quickly pave your pathway to freedom and be free from the chains that have kept you stuck. My intention with this podcast is to serve as a guide for warriors who want to form a healthy foundation of body, mind, and spirit, and sustain it by changing who they are being from the inside and having a stronger connection to their higher selves. My goal is to help students end the unnecessary suffering that they place on themselves by having poor health habits, negative thought loops, and a lack of self-worth. I am so happy that you're here. Hello, Empowered Warriors. Happy day to you, wherever you are in the world. It is my favorite day of the week. It's podcast day. And I can't wait to talk about a subject that probably will resonate with many, many of you. And so you know, this information has been flowing through me for the past week or so. I have this very growing list of ideas for podcasts, topics that you all have been requesting to know more about. But this one has been in my awareness and has been begging me to talk about recently. So warriors, intuition always wins, and it's become obvious to me that this needs to be heard. In fact, I am going to bet that this episode alone will be very popular because of the importance of this content. So without further ado, let's move on, shall we? So today I'd like to discuss how allowing your circumstances to get in the way of your plans will forever keep you unhappy, unfulfilled, and broke. So this podcast was born last week, the idea of this podcast, when I was reading a post in a professional Facebook group that I am in with my peers. One fellow acupuncturist was saying that she was reading a great book about building wealth and stopped reading it when COVID hit. In other words, she stopped working on her prosperity consciousness, the thing that will make her abundant, when her circumstances changed. Now, keep in mind, I am not judging this behavior. I myself have been extremely guilty of doing this in the past, and I understand how current events can be unexpected and jarring to our plans. I know how devastated COVID has been for many, many people. You may or may not be aware that if you are the person who drops their life for their circumstances and you're triggered, then this is an opportunity for you to look within yourself and allow the truth to come in. First of all, what is causing you to be triggered? I invite you to really listen to this episode with not only open ears, but with an open heart. And anytime you are triggered, as a reminder, you are working not from your higher, most authentic self. You are working from an old story coming from your ego that has been playing on repeat in your brain that most likely you were programmed with a long, long time ago. An example of an old story could be, quote, "I am not good enough." That is a story that many of us have, and it comes from years of programming from society, parents, religion, etc., etc., etc. It is often the hidden story that is behind stories that may feel more familiar, such as, "I can't dance," "I am not creative," or "I am terrible with money." If you are noticing yourself feeling reactive during this episode, I strongly invite you to sit down in quiet reflection when not driving and do some meditating or journaling on what is coming up for you. Consider what is causing you to allow circumstances, whether it be your own or others you are entangled with, to pervade your life to the point where you stop doing something that is going to help you succeed. And where do you see yourself in a year or 5 years if you continue to allow your circumstances to, what's the word I always hear when people make excuses? Derail you. Remember, the only person who can derail you is you. No person, situation, or circumstance is responsible for derailing you. You are derailing you. At this point, I am hoping it's becoming obvious that allowing your circumstances to rule your life is a form of self-sabotage. Whether you gave your power away to fear during COVID, or were late for your coaching call because your sister called to talk your ear off, or, and this is something I saw all the time when I had my acupuncture clinic in Boston, canceling or being late for an appointment that is important for your well-being because of a last-minute work thing, a manipulative boss, or it could be you violating the boundary with yourself. You being late because you slept in too long, or you procrastinated getting into the shower, or you spent 15 minutes too long with Netflix when you needed to leave the house for your appointment and you are now rushing. Are you starting to see how you might be allowing your circumstances to get in the way of your happiness, your well-being, and from you making money in your business? Maybe you are still a little skeptical, and that's okay. If this information is new to you, and if I were you, I would be skeptical too. But chances are, the more you think about how you are the only person who is responsible for what happens to you, for what you focus on expands, the more at least part of you will begin to realize that abundance is everywhere when it comes to the result of who you are being. So let me ask you, and know that this is said in love, how are you showing up for your own abundance, your own happiness, your own foundation of balance of yin and yang, brain habits, and connection to your higher self? Did you quit reading that book on wealth and give your power away to fear during a challenging time? Did you cheap out and not spend money on something like healthy food because you worried you would run out of money? Did you put your dreams of building a business on hold because of fear, or you allowed your soul-sucking job to drain your energy? Are you not making the money that you could be making because you have 3 kids and you should be only focusing on your kids and not yourself? Do you allow crisis in any form to create boundaries for you instead of you creating boundaries for yourself? During my time in isolation, while my acupuncture clinic was closed and I wasn't earning money from acupuncture, I spent a lot of time studying success. I never had the identity of a reader, but I changed my identity and became more of a reader. And yes, it really is that easy to change your identity. And I started to read books on money, success, and business. And the one theme that kept showing up over and over again is that success leaves clues. Meaning, what do successful people do in order to be successful? It may or may not be obvious at this point that successful business owners do not get stuck in their circumstances and allow their outer world to influence their habits, their commitments, and their choices. So if you are still not making the money that you would like to do in business, let me ask you, where is your attention? Is it making thousands of lists and working on, quote, all the things, the doing, and paying little attention to how you are being? Are you spending so much time doing that you have no room for being? Are you more committed to fear and worry than you are committed to growing your business? And that last question I know will hurt many. You may have a million excuses of why you do so much in your business, why you are justified to being fearful. And the reason it hurts? Well, let me ask you. Are you starting to realize that this pain is reflecting your truth? Perhaps you will know deep down that you have spent too much time in fear instead of using your will to persevere, to work on yourself, so that you can easily and freely run your business while growing it and being prosperous. So instead of obsessing over all the processes, all the things, all the doing, how about committing to changing your way of being and working on yourself? And to be clear, working on yourself equals working on your yin-yang balance, so your overall balance in your body, your brain habits, and your connection to your highest, most authentic self. Sadly, most people don't ever consider that having a successful business means that they are constantly working on themselves, their being. As a result, these entrepreneurs are not only eternally stressed out and often very unhappy, but they are often very, very broke. And about those successful people I've been studying, well, here's what I'm learning. Successful, happy, and abundant people continue to work on themselves, their health, their self-development, their connection to their higher selves, no matter what the circumstances. It may or may not be obvious at this point that successful business owners do not get stuck in their circumstances and allow their outer world to influence their habits, their commitment, and their choices. As you may or may not know, last week I announced that I was closing my acupuncture practice for good in August of this year. So my landlords asked me if I would announce that there is a space for rent in some of my professional groups. So I did that, and I received an email from a colleague about it a couple of weeks later. She wanted to know more about the space, the usual stuff. But then after going back and forth a bit, I sensed the tone of her emails changing. It started to feel almost frantic. Basically, she was worried about starting a practice now, because of COVID. Quote, she said, "This is not the best time to be starting a practice." And you know what? If this is not the time to be starting a practice, what kind of practice do you think she is manifesting for herself? Where is her attention? Is it on being excited about having a thriving new business? Or is it on all the old stories we are taught about starting a business in a time of crisis? In our society, we are taught to be so mediocre with so many limited beliefs. We assume because something has challenged us before that it will be challenging the next time, even though it has nothing to do with the last time. This time is a totally new frame with new opportunities that we are able to shape simply by our thoughts. Are you starting to see how everything is 100% possible 100% of the time? And let's face it, things happen that are out of our control. The question is, are you going to allow the next crisis to control you, or are you going to calmly move through the crisis while continuing to be abundance in your business and your life? And for those of you who feel this message seems greedy or insensitive or maybe abrupt, I invite you to ask yourself, where do you need to shift your attention so that you can see the possibility that this message can afford you? Who do you need to be in order to make massive amounts of money so that you can help change the world? And how can you best leave your legacy? Is it by getting entangled in your circumstances, or is it by forming a strong foundation within yourself so that you can be that steadfast entrepreneur who continues to make an impact, even in crisis? The world needs you, and the world needs the highest form of you, especially now. And before I close with this episode, I'd love to know if you've considered what not working on your inner self is costing you, how brushing off yourself for another year is harming your business and your finances. And so your takeaway today is this: what habits can you change in yourself to ensure that you can be an abundantly successful, happy, and healthy entrepreneur that you've always visualized for yourself? And if you love this message today, or if you found it impactful in any way, please tag me on Instagram at @IamAngelaNoel and let me know what your takeaways are. And with that, empowered warriors, I wish you a great day today, and I look forward to having you listen on the next episode. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Empowered Warrior podcast. It is an honor and a privilege to have you as a listener. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast and would like to help others pave their pathway to freedom, end their disempowerment and suffering, and become an empowered warrior, please share this podcast with your friends and family. Also, it is my intention to help humanity grow and evolve to their highest potential. So if you really enjoy what you're hearing, please help me spread the word by leaving a review in iTunes. Thank you again, and I am so grateful to be able to serve you in this very exciting way.